So it has officially been more than 1 week since the newest Legend of Zelda game has released, which of course is The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. I have been playing a lot of the game, and I have slowly but surely fallen almost completely in love with the game. It's a ton of fun. It's a game that I was initially unsure of after seeing the first reveal trailer, but definitely kind of came around to, and as the weeks went on after that trailer, I got really excited for it, and every new overview trailer they released made me more and more excited. Now, interestingly, after the first few days of playing the game, I was certainly a little mixed. There was a lot that I was enjoying, and I was seeing the vision of what they were doing, but I was also starting to have some issues or complaints with other elements of the game. So it was a little touch and go for me in the first couple of days. However, I actually got over a hump, probably on day 3 or 4, where I started to really sink into what the game was asking me to do. And now that I've played a lot more of the game, I can officially say that I think it's really pretty great. Now, I do certainly have some critiques of the game. A lot of it has to do with the combat and the reliance on the monster echoes for doing some of the fighting for you. As I've played farther into the game, and I think at this point, I'm pretty comfortable saying I'm well past halfway, unless they give us a surprise like 4th act to the game and the story, I'm definitely past the halfway point. As it's gone on, I've certainly started to adapt to the monster echo mechanic, and it's working better for me as I upgrade Try and the ability to lay out more monsters to do fighting and whatnot. So it's certainly improving. However, I do have some issues with it, but outside of that and some of the menu and UI issues that I have, I overall have really fallen in love with the game, and I love using the echoes for platforming and puzzle solving and all of the dungeons and everything going on there. It's a really fun game that I have definitely fallen in love with, like I said. And one of the most important elements, if not maybe the most important element to everything that is Echoes of Wisdom, is the fact that it is the first officially released by Nintendo game that stars Zelda. Yes, of course, we all know about the Legend of Zelda CDI games that feature Zelda as the starring character, but those were not actually developed and produced by Nintendo, so of course they don't count. The thing about Echoes of Wisdom, when it was revealed, is all of us said collectively, wow, we finally have the Zelda game starring Zelda that many of us have asked for or hoped for a very long time. Because there has been a conversation, and I feel like I first saw this start to pop up, I would say in the last 5 or 6 or so years, maybe even as far back as into the Wii U era. I can't say for sure. But sometime in the last 5 to 7 or so years, I feel like I started to see a bit of a conversation, and it started to grow around a lot of people saying, what if we could play as Zelda? Or what if we could choose to play as Link or Zelda in one game? Or if there's a game where you switch back and forth between playing as Link and playing as Zelda. And it was certainly a very interesting idea, and I started to get excited about the idea as well. Why not let me play as Zelda? I think that would be really cool. And then, of course, that conversation really started to gain steam after the introduction of Hyrule Warriors, because in that series of games, of which there are now 2 games, you can play as a couple of different versions as Zelda or Sheik, and it's an action-focused game. You're Zelda, you've got swords and bombs and arrows and magic abilities and all sorts of crazy stuff, and you're just wiping out fields of enemies, just plowing through them, because that's how those games are designed. And it was really cool amongst all of these Zelda characters you get to play in those games that one of the characters you could play is Zelda. And it was a lot of fun, and it made us think about playing as Zelda in some sort of standard Legend of Zelda game that has an action focus. And we can't even forget that at one point, Linkle was brought into this conversation. You guys remember Linkle? That was a thing for a hot minute. And so between Zelda fans' natural ability to gravitate towards the idea of playing as Zelda in a game, and then the introduction of the Hyrule Warrior series, and then beyond that, the introduction of the Linkle character, even though that was more Link and not Zelda, I still think that it overall planted the seed in a lot of our brains, those of us who are Zelda fans, to think, why not play as Zelda in some kind of a game? Maybe one time they'll do that. And then there were kind of rumors that maybe Nintendo was going to make a game where you actually starred as Zelda. And so that brings us full circle to the reveal of Echoes of Wisdom earlier this year. And now, we're a week beyond its release where we're finally playing as Zelda in a game. Now, the thing is, for all of Echoes of Wisdom's successes and things that it does very well, it is certainly a game that is taking a unique approach to starring as Zelda instead of making it a copy and paste of a standard Zelda game where normally you'd be Link, but in this case, we're going to palette swap Link and just say, oh, now you're a girl, now you're Zelda, and you're going to play a normal Zelda game. Whether it was a 3D open world game or a top-down 2D game like this game turned out to be, they didn't do the palette swap. They didn't do the copy and paste. They took a very unique approach and said, you're going to play as Zelda, but this is not an action game. You're not going to have a sword and shield and a bomb by default with unlimited ability to use these weapons, and you're not just going to go around slicing and dicing enemies while also fighting bosses and traversing a map and going through dungeons. We're going to give you the tri-rod. We're going to have you make echoes. We're going to have an element of combat strategy where you lay out enemies to do the fighting for you. We will give you a sword and an arrow and some other things that are more in the action genre, but we're going to limit it so that you actually have to pay more attention to using echoes for the majority of the gameplay. And so, like I said, even though it took me a couple of days to adapt to what the game is asking you to do, I've certainly learned to fall in love with it despite some of the critiques I mentioned earlier. But this also now has me thinking about the action version of a Zelda starring Zelda game and what that could look like, and if Nintendo would ever do that in the future. And how, I'm going to be honest, even though I'm loving Echoes of Wisdom and I think that their commitment to this unique approach is one of the strongest elements to the game, I do still hope that maybe one day Nintendo will say, we're going to make another Zelda game where you play as Zelda, and this time, it's going to be more normal Zelda. We're going to give her a bunch of weapons, and you're going to be kicking ass and taking names just as if you were Link in any other Zelda game. I will be really curious to hear from a lot of you guys in the comments below if this makes sense to you and if maybe you agree. Because I think it's possible to both like and appreciate what Echoes of Wisdom is, and how Nintendo took a unique approach to playing as Zelda, and also still wanting a different Zelda game where you play as Zelda. By the way, take a shot every time I say Zelda in this video. But you can love and appreciate Echoes of Wisdom, but also desire a different Zelda game where you do play as Zelda, but you're also playing it as if you were Link. And you've got a sword and regular items and regular action-oriented gear, and you're solving puzzles, you're going through dungeons, and you're just fighting as if you're an ass-kicking warrior, just like Link is known to be in all of the other games that he stars in. I think there's a really cool idea there, and a really cool opportunity for Nintendo. Again, I fully embrace their idea of saying, we're going to make the first Zelda-focused game something unique, and give her more of magic abilities, and make that the focus of the gameplay, and not just a normal Zelda game. But I think if they find the right story to tell, and you can do something similar to Echoes of Wisdom, because a lot of the conceit of the story of Echoes of Wisdom and why you're playing as Zelda is that Link gets captured and lost in the still world, and so he was working to save Zelda in the very beginning, but the roles flip and reverse. He gets sent to the still world, Zelda is freed, and here you are playing as Zelda, trying to make your way to Link, who's lost in this other dimension world called the still world. And it's very cool, and I think that they could tell another version of that in another game. I mean, there's a few ways they could do it. Maybe they just say Link is off doing his own thing, but while Link is gone somewhere else, well, something else happens to Hyrule while Zelda's around, and so you have to play as her, and again, you just play it as a normal action game, and it would, I'm not gonna lie, it would maybe be a little bit more of the palette swap, copy and paste. I am kind of asking for that, and I'm not going to shy away from it because I would like that just as much as I like Echoes of Wisdom with its unique approach as well. I'm ultimately trying to say that I think there's value in both. The unique thing with Echoes of Wisdom, the palette swap thing with a normal game where you're just Zelda instead of Link. I think there is a future for both kinds of Zelda starring games to exist. All the while, this is how we get greedy as game fans, right? All the while still wanting the regular Zelda series to continue where Link is the star. And the next mainline game that continues on, taking, after Tears of the Kingdom has released. And whatever that future looks like, it's going to be a different art style, a different approach to open world and combat. We already kind of know they're moving on from the general tone and approach they took with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom to something else new. And I can't wait to see what that's like. I hope it's a combination of traditional 3D Zelda and the Breath of the Wild 3D Zelda, and then they make something wholly new out of it while playing as Link. That's what I hope they do there. But alongside of that, let's start this kind of little subgenre of games where Zelda is the focus. And maybe you do the occasional game like Echoes of Wisdom where it's unique and you're doing different things that isn't just normal combat. But I would like to see, I'm asking you, Nintendo, please give me a Zelda game where she's also an ass-kicking warrior, just like we see her be in the Hyrule Warrior games. I think that would be really cool. I think the fans would embrace it. We know Nintendo develops great games. They're not going to make a bad game. It's going to end up being a cool story, great gameplay, a unique spin to playing as Zelda while still being an ass-kicking warrior. There's a future for all of these games. I'm asking for a lot. I know I sound like a greedy Nintendo fan and a greedy Zelda fan here. But look, Nintendo pumps out Zelda games like crazy nowadays. Not as often as Mario, but we know it's almost, in a weird way, sort of become a bit of an annualized franchise in a lot of ways, whether they're releasing spin-offs or remakes or mainline games or multiplayer games or whatever they're doing, remasters and things, HD ports. I think there's a future for regular Link-focused games and Zelda-focused games. And yes, even though I like Echoes of Wisdom, I'm asking for the ass-kicking warrior princess Zelda to come into a new video game and just do the thing and be a badass. And that's what I want. Again, I don't know if you guys will agree. Maybe you always want it to be a unique thing like Echoes of Wisdom. Personally, I want the ass-kicking version of Zelda, and I hope Nintendo does that, and I think maybe they will.